Hello, can you hear me? Maybe Eric or Tori, somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, super. Great, awesome. Okay, so we have quorum. Welcome to the first Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting of 2025. I'm going to start things off because every year at the start of the committee meetings, we have an election of our chair and vice chair. So I'll call the meeting to order. It's 12:02. And I guess who's going to do the adoption of the minutes? I guess you would probably for now, like read that just because you're still technically our chair. Or am I going to do that?
No, I think what we need to do
Is
is
the
do the
election
land
first.
acknowledgement,
Yeah.
and then we need to do the election,
Okay.
and then we can.
Got it. Go back. Okay.
Yeah, subtitles, wait.
Oh, yes, you're right. Stand by. Transcript. Actually gets captions. Now. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do the land acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect that we are on Robinson Huron Treaty territory, that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawatang. Bawatang is the home of Gardner First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. So as I said, every year, as part of our terms of reference, we have an election for our chair and vice chair of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. Last year, our chair was Donna Hilsinger and our vice chair was Mark Britton. So I will put it out there. Is there anyone interested in being our chair for the 2025 year for the Environmental Sustainability Committee?
No.
Okay.
I was waiting to see
All
if
right.
anyone.
All right, Donna, yeah, great. Is there any interest in being the vice chair? Mark has put
We
his
have to
name.
do them one at a time.
Okay, oh, we do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so make the resolution then first.
I believe then you have to have a mover and a seconder and then a
Okay.
vote.
Right. Please, do I have a mover for Donna to be our chair for 2025? I see Tori and seconders, Irie. Okay. All in favor? Okay, so resolve that Donna Hilsinger be appointed as the chair of the 2025 Environmental Sustainability Committee. Okay, anyone interested in being the vice chair? Mark has expressed interest again, if no one is interested, but if anybody wants to put their name out there, feel free to do so. Essentially, you're the chair in the event that the chair has to leave or is not able to attend, with a lot of support from me. I'm not seeing any, so is there a mover to elect Mark Britton as the chair, the vice chair for 2025? Okay, I see Andrew. And a seconder? Irie? All in favor? Okay, so resolve that Mark Britton be appointed as the vice chair for the 2025 Environmental Sustainability Committee. All right, we'll go back to our agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is adoption of the minutes. Could I have someone to move and second the adoption of the minutes of our last meeting, which took place on November 18th of 2024? Okay, thank you, Eric. And thank you. Anyone else, please? Tori. It'd have to be Tori, yes. Thank you, Tori. Any additions, deletions, changes, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of the last meeting, that is carried. Moving on, anyone with a declaration of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. It's for adoption of the agenda. I need someone to move into second the adoption of today's agenda. Thank you, Nairi. Thank you, Tori. Any additions to today's agenda or changes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval, that is carried. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the update from the Terms of Reference Task Force. And I'm going to ask Emily if she could take us through the information that was in our agenda package. We're looking today for any further comments. Is that right, Emily? Any further comments or anything that would prevent us, or I shouldn't say that. We're looking to finalize this, so our recommendation for updated terms of reference can go forward to council for approval. So if Emily, if you could go ahead, please, and thank you.
Okay,
Just, the scoring rubric is what my email to is that, time to talk about that or not?
yeah, well, I have a note here,
Okay.
so we'll talk about that. Right now, I'm just gonna give a summary of some of the feedback on the application itself, but I will discuss what you brought up and make sure it's included in the rubric, which I'll send out to everyone for one final look as well. Okay, so as you know, we have a small group that's been working on the revisions of the Green Initiatives Fund application to incorporate different components from the working group. So, or sorry, the task force. So this was shared with the committee last month. Some of the core feedback, we didn't receive any comments on the scoring rubric until today, or rather last night. And so I don't have that with me, but just making sure that the impact of the project, so you know, the long-term, short-term, and longer is included. So I will be making that, double checking that and making sure that that's considered. There was feedback about the appreciation for a more holistic view of sustainability. That said, there were some concerns about how the latest iteration would meet the community where they're at and ensure that it's accessible, approachable, and non-intimidating. Some questions regarding the structure, regarding the 9 relatives framework and the definition. So what do they mean? The words, what do the applicants do with them? Can we try to build a more obvious bridge between the first questions of section 5 and the second definitions in the terms of reference? Bringing up what was discussed at the last meeting in November, why these 9 relatives and not others? And that we really need something concrete like a user guide, placemat, 1-pager to support applicants in perpetuity. Not everyone can attend an info session, and Andrew, who's been leading this work, may not be here forever on the committee, for example. There was also feedback on reworking the definitions and policy pieces, and insights brought forward about most current definitions of sustainability when you look at them from the UN, etc. Focus on a balance and preservation for future generations. There's an understanding the objective of this adjustment was to recognize that projects should consider the interconnectedness in particular, and a related point often brought up was just GHG emissions not being the only goal. Further elaboration on the ecological interconnectedness has been a core concept in sustainability and sustainable resource management for a long time, with good reason, and that there really is no reason to change our definition of sustainability in this way. I think I had some more. There were some comments about emphasizing that this piece about the interconnectedness is important for us administering the Green Initiatives Program Fund, saying that it's particularly of importance due to the ecological interconnectedness to the Anishinaabe. There was a recommendation using the UN definition of sustainability with an emphasis on interconnectedness, long-term impacts, and environmental sustainability. And then consider like addressing those pieces in particular, and also some comments about the latest iteration of the application, the end of life planning and recycling concept was nice to capture. but we need some rationale and definitions to beef this up. And also using language like if applicable, because some applicants, depending on, the organization or the project, they may not, like some of these pieces may not be relevant to them, and we don't want to exclude them. And also to have a citation for that reference, the source about those 9 relatives. So those are some of the key takeaways that the working group received and has been working on incorporating. Some key changes that have been included in the latest iteration in your agenda package are some pieces in the application removed from definition to policy and vice versa. A reiteration of that ecological interconnectedness in the definition of sustainability. Within the working group, which perhaps we'll discuss more today, there is a bit of a contested opinion about the UN definitions. We believe we've addressed the concerns about the sustainable supply chains, and we reworked the 9 relatives component and created a supplemental 1-pager to accompany applicants in the future, and also defined what a local business means. So I'm going to pull up here the terms of reference as they stand with the track changes, so we can, have a bit more of a broader discussion about that. But just from a next step standpoint, we've been given some information today from Andrew Judge regarding the source of the research regarding the 9 relatives. So I'd like to give the committee some time to look at that and incorporate that citation into the terms of reference. So it's quite likely that we're going to meet again after we have some more discussion today.
Emily,
In early February.
Emily, just to clarify that position or that what is it called? Position paper or report I wrote for the government is not the origin, but does include reference to the 9, the 9 pieces.
Okay.
The research was done in 2018, so it was part of a SSHRC grant, and it's not going to be formatted the way that maybe people want to see. Or are used to seeing academically, and I make no apologies for that. So I can share reference lists and everything, but if that's what people really want, then I'm happy to do that. But I don't know how much time people have to actually go through the extensive research that's been done on this topic by me and others. So yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification there, Andrew. Thank you. I think that it would be fair, it would be a good idea for the rest of the committee to be able to look at that. Maybe when we get to that section, because if everyone can recall, we've done a couple of revisions of this application. We originally had definitions of those 9 relatives within the fund terms of reference. But then we've removed that and kept it more lean, and we've included definitions in the backgrounder. So perhaps some of those insights that you were speaking to could be included in that backgrounder. I'm not sure.
I would prefer, like I said originally, to present on this, and then that was the whole intention of clarifying things for people, because when I presented to you and Mark, you guys understood it much on a much deeper level. Like I said, I'm willing to provide that, not only for committee
members. That's part of our next steps.
Confused. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Okay, so maybe what I can do is start out with a roundtable. If anyone has anything that they'd really like to highlight and focus on from this, I know you haven't had a ton of time to look it over. I apologize for that. This month flew away on me. But I'm also happy to go through each chunk, bit by bit, because this is really the core of our meeting today, and do it that way. So what would people prefer? You want to start with your own feedback first, or we go through it chunk by chunk? What do you recommend? Go through it?
I would ask for overall high level feedback first.
Okay,
And then if there's, you know, but that would be as opposed to. Taking the time to go through, it's like 10 or 12 pages or something like that,
Yeah.
unless you want to do each section, but at a high level and not read,
I'll be
right?
doing that high level.
Okay, well then, whatever you think is the most efficient.
Can you just give like a quick summary on the intent of the update again, just because it was back in November.
Yes, so. Andrew, do you want to summarize the resolution that you brought forward to the committee?
Yes, I can. I don't have it in front of me. Do you know where it is? But I can summarize, Nairi, like essentially, because at the beginning of our meetings and because this is about sustainability and based on, I would say, feedback from committee members over the time that I've been a part of this, and sort of challenging, I guess, some of the applications, since the focus of the Environmental Sustainability Committee in the terms of reference was primarily carbon reduction, that I mean, since this resolution was accepted, others agreed, that it was important that we take a broader view. So I offered up to be on a subcommittee with Mark and Emily, because the current committee needed some clarification on how that would be operationalized within the grant application. So we took like a stab at sort of defining that in a more whole way, based on some of my learning related to Indigenous knowledge related to the environment as well as sustainability. So that's kind of like gist of it. And yeah, that's kind of where, so then, Mark and Emily and I met several times. I presented to them for about an hour on like the origin of this and where it comes from and why it's relatable. And I think that's like a missing piece for our committee right now still. And I've offered to present on it, not only to our committee, but also, if applicable, to a larger format, which I do professionally regularly, so that others can better understand like the broad, like, when you just see 9 new factors and maybe like, there's good suggestions in terms of editing this. And I think like we tried our best since the last meeting to incorporate those suggestions. And certainly I on Friday or something, like reorganize some of the writing so that it's not so specific. And it's not so like you have to do this. It's more like, here's a suggestion about sort of looking this not only in terms of scales of time, rather than, oh, we're going to get a electric snowblower and that's going to reduce our carbon emissions. And that's great to some degree, but I think that we could do a little bit better.
Andrew, if I may, I found the resolution here.
Okay.
Pardon the banging, there seems to be some construction going on here at the city hall.
Can't hear anything, so.
So I'm just gonna share this here. So this is the resolution that was brought forward by Andrew in September 2024. I don't know if people on Zoom want me to make it a little bit bigger, just let me know. And so what we've been doing at the task force is looking at amending our terms of reference to ensure we have that more holistic perspective when it comes to evaluating applications as they relate to the Indigenous peoples of Hawaii, in particular those 9 factors identified in the resolution. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks for, I knew it was familiar, but I missed that meeting in November. And
Yep.
so-
It's okay. It's been a while. It's been a while.
So I appreciate the summary. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, So, has anyone had a chance to look it over? I've summarized some of the feedback that I received in December. I'm happy to kind of focus on the key areas, specifically the definitions, and the environmental impact of the application. I see Tori's hand is up, so Tori, over to you. If you want, I can scroll through. I've got the application on the screen. So whatever section you're moving up.
I guess just overall as feedback, I think before I feel comfortable recommending this go to council, I really do need that holistic download from Andrew. I feel like I'm sort of what's the metaphor of like you're only seeing like the elephant's leg and the whole elephant is over here. I feel like it would be like not appropriate from a due diligence perspective to be able to say like, yes, I support this 100% without getting the appropriate background information and perspective from Andrew. So I just wanted to say that up front. And then secondly, I just had a question. I had submitted some recommendations and comments that weren't necessarily directly related to sort of the new approach around looking at sustainability. They more targeted like how can we add a little bit more structure around, you know, what happens when a community organization and a city department have applications and we want to prioritize the city the nonprofit over the city department, like language around that. And I don't see it reflected in this newest draft. And so I'm just curious if that is still something that people want to talk about, or if this version of the draft is really just focused on fleshing out the definitions pieces and that aspect.
I acknowledge that has not been included, not on purpose. It was just an oversight. So thanks for bringing that up again. I think that should be included in the terms of reference, because that's sort of where we lay down the rules of how this application works. So setting a priority, even if it's a statement, priority will be given to, for example, community groups over city departments in particular projects that should be funded from an operational standpoint. I think a sentence like that is fairly clear, and it could probably do it. Would that be something that aligns with what you're suggesting?
Yeah, and I just want to sort of raise it. I'll happy to send in the chat like a couple examples that I floated in the submission that I sent back in December.
Yeah.
Totally for discussion, like totally for critique, but these are just some examples.
Thanks. Anything else, Tori?
No.
Okay. Any other general comments that may have been missed, or thoughts that anyone wants to speak to?
I had one around, when applicants submit their proposal, how, I guess, what's the sustainability of their project? Is it, you know, are they looking to come back every year for more funding? Are they gonna do some fundraising themselves? Are they looking for sponsors? Like, you know, like what's the, how are they gonna make their project sustainable?
So is this like a phased project, or
Yeah,
is it like?
it would be good to know, and it's only because, and it's not because I'm against at all, you know, tree planting at Clerk.
Yeah.
But you know, when you have other applicants that come in and they've been funded a year before, like how, yeah, is it a staged project? Will they be looking for more funding in the future? Like just a heads up so that you can think about that.
Yeah,
You know, like, because it shouldn't necessarily, projects shouldn't be based on coming to the city every single year. They're like, what about fundraising within the community and.
so I hear you,
Yeah.
and I think this aligns, and I'm sorry if I apologize if I missed this. I have lots of notes, but I'm having a deja vu here. I think, like, as the terms of reference are designed right now, you can apply more than once a year as an organization, so long as you've submitted your post-grant report, the financing is cleared and the check has been paid out. I will say, as the keeper of the leads and getting the applications here, we are not in a situation of needing to be austere with our funding. Like we have, if it weren't for some of these projects that came from the city, like we're not beating people off. And I think going to the comment from the feedback about how do we make sure this fund is approachable, we need to remind ourselves, it's only 50,000. Like the tourism fund has over 100.
Yes.
But I think how we could address this, and I'm happy to craft language, is add it to that precedent statement. If you have applied before and we are in a situation of requests that exceed our current budget or remaining budget, priority will be given to applicants who are new and who have not applied this year. Some kind of a statement like that
Yeah.
that can help with that.
Because that was the last, I think that was the last meeting that it was at, we had like more requests than funding was available. And then, trying to figure out how to manipulate or go back to them with, okay, can we do this much for
Like who
this
takes
thing?
priority?
Yeah, who takes priority
Yeah.
in that situation?
Okay, so we'll add that in the terms of reference. I don't know, maybe under the policy or wherever we have something about rules before we get into. So maybe section 4.0, which is processing for evaluating proposals. Something like that, or I'll figure it out. Want to make sure it's accurate, so we're not in the situation again. Okay, thanks, Nairi. Any other comments, like holistic comments on your part?
No, I'm looking forward to Andrew's presentation.
I think we all are. Okay, so any more summary statements from anyone else? I'm not seeing any, so I'm just gonna,
Here to some of you.
oh, Eric, sorry, go for it.
I'll try to be quick because I've brought things up a couple times in different meetings, but basically that first part of the definition where we define sustainability as a broad interconnected understanding of environmental stewardship, not just about preserving resources of future generations, but also about ensuring that life forms continue to thrive and balance, is a good definition. Honestly, I don't see it as that different than most of the common definitions of sustainability. And maybe this is most of what we're focusing on here is emphasizing the interconnectedness, which I totally have no problem with and I totally agree with. But it's worded as if we're redefining the term sustainability, and that's the part I have a problem with, especially not seeing the rest of the elephant, to use Tori's metaphor. And I would also, maybe it's a bit personal, I guess, but being a scientist with a specialization in ecology, like I know the history of ecological science, and I know that interconnectedness is core to that, and that ecology is a core part of sustainability. So my suggestion was that we should at least start with an existing definition. It doesn't have to be the UN definition, but start with some existing definition and then use this 9 relative presentation as a very specific example of why we in Sault Ste. Marie consider the interconnectedness and especially the ecological interconnectedness part of the definition of sustainability to be particularly important to us because of, the history of the First Nations in this area. So that was on a high level, that's my position on this. And I guess the takeaway being, I just saw it a little bit too much as a redefinition rather than a re-emphasis, I guess is kind of I would rather see it a bit of a re-emphasis on interconnectedness rather than I see it presented currently as we're trying to redefine sustainability, which I would have a problem with.
Okay, so thanks for the clarification. It's always better to hear it. Sorry again for the construction. In the background, it's always better to hear it than just read it. So, I get the logic of what you're saying. Do you have a recommendation for another definition? Like, and when you say like, an existing definition, like,
Well, that definition that we have there in that first paragraph is good. I mean, that's very similar to the UN definition in a way. We're kind of just rephrasing.
like
I mean,
this one?
yeah,
The original read.
yeah, I think the revised one is better, actually,
Okay,
the original one, in some ways. I guess my point is more about the next paragraph. And I honestly, I haven't spent any time reading this revised version, so I'm still commenting on the one I saw back in December. I'm, but the one I saw back in December, when I read it, it came off a little bit more like, when you read the first paragraph and then the second one, it felt like we were trying to say that interconnectedness was not a part of sustainability and that it should be. I think it's starting to read a little bit more like we're re-emphasizing that as the part that we see to be particularly important, which obviously is our point here, I think, with the terms of reference, is that we particularly think interconnectedness and especially ecological interconnectedness is particularly important. The UN definition, for example, I think focuses more on interconnectedness between like social aspects and environmental aspects and the economy, and it's a slightly different definition of interconnectedness. But I don't know, maybe I haven't spent any time with this new version. I just wanted to make sure that people understood my comments on the old version.
okay, so I hear what you're saying. Thanks for clarifying it. I think there's a way that I've made some notes about trying to make that very clear that this is, our positioning, why we're trying to make that emphasis on the interconnectedness with the Anishinaabe peoples here in Sault Ste. Marie. So we'll take that back as a task force and see if we can make that a bit clearer. And again, I know that this was sent out last minute, so everyone can take some time and maybe it is reflected a bit more, but we'll give it another crack, okay? All right,
Can I say something?
yep,
Yeah, so one of the things that has been emphasized in that community by people from that community, which I'm not from there, was, and I know that we're not necessarily doing this, but just that we have to be cautious of things like United Nations declarations as superseding our practices and worldview. And that's because some people will use that, so then that takes precedent over our views and our ways. And I mean, we're already compromising greatly by putting this all in English and focusing on English. So yeah, I think we have to be cautious in the definitions that we use, but I mean, I'm open to changing it. At the end of the day, the reason this change was because the original definition was about the reduction of emissions, and that's it. Like that's the only reason why this changed. However you want to use it, like, I mean, I'm not an environmental scientist, so if you think you can write a better one that meets sort of your requirements, and please do. And I'm open to that. It's just the only thing I wanted personally was to go beyond what was said is we're going to reduce carbon emissions, and I think we need to do better than that as an environmental sustainability committee.
Got it. Okay, so I think that we're getting there, like, we're not, like, we seem to have a general consensus almost about this definition, like the revised definition of sustainability. And I do believe that we've really hit, I think we've done a good job in moving away from just carbon emissions and bringing in that interconnectedness. So, there won't be a reference to the UN. This is a definition that's been created on the part of the committee, in particular the task force. So I think we're okay, but everyone go take another look at it, and we will meet again in February. So any other kind of holistic comments from anyone before I start going through this? All right. Okay, so as I said in my comments, we've moved some things around from the policy section. I've got track changes on here so you can see where things have been moved. This is the current definition that we have for sustainability. It brings in that interconnected piece. We moved in the land acknowledgement component and just the specific to Boarding, Sault Ste. Marie area, and brought in that where we tie this in a bit more to the nine relatives piece. It's a bit wordy, but we want to establish context here. And we talked about, the cyclical approach to sustainability. Again, we get multiple times reiterating the interconnectedness, for a balanced and sustainable ecosystem. So that's sort of the core pieces of that definition here. And then in this part here, we've added some additional language regarding impact. That's something that is included as part of the evaluation and the scoring rubric, and the application itself, which we'll talk about more details. So this is specifically a definition. And we've included some language in this impact piece addressing supply chains as well as local businesses, which are addressed in the application itself. So again, look at this as an opportunity for me summarizing some of the key things that have been done for our next review when everyone has more time to look at that. So that's sort of some things that, like, this has been completely removed, and we address this more in the impact piece. And so that's where things lie with the definitions component. And then we dive into the actual application itself. And the work really begins in section 5, environmental benefits. So this is something that we were supposed to remove the last time, which we now have. And here we have omitted that breakdown of water quality, energy efficiency, all those 6 different elements, and kept it more broad. So environmental sustainability, and tying it back to the definition that we've created in the terms of reference. And then we go into there was discussion about if you're looking to replace a piece of equipment, so for example, LED lighting, talk about what you're going to do with the disposal of the non-efficient equipment, if applicable. And so this starts bringing in that piece about the impacts, the long-term impacts, because if you're taking something off the grid, we want it to stay off the grid, right? And bringing in that if applicable piece as well, because it depends on the project, right? Trying to keep this, accessible for all types of applications. So then we brought in the piece about the supply chain. Again, it's applicable, going back to the terms of reference where we define that, talking about materials, getting applicants to think about the materials used in the production and transportation of whatever it is they're applying for. And if there's a way that they're trying to bring local supply chains into the materials or goods, and their impacts on sustainability. So that's where we've addressed that component here. Again, keeping that if applicable, because it depends on the type of project, and applicants, may not necessarily be able to go that far into the weeds, but it's at least in there. This goes into the community benefits, again, talking about if it's applicable, do they support local businesses with the purchase of goods and services if they are applying for them, and how so? This has been around for a while, but we've just finessed some of the language in this question. Does it complement or connect to local initiatives? And then here is where we address the medium, long, and short-term impacts of projects within the community, referring them back to section 3.3 of the terms of reference. And that's it. So a lot of the work, I think, has been more on the definition side of things within this. We've received quite a bit of feedback from committee members. I have some things that I'm going to finesse for today. But if there's, I want everyone to take some more time to look at this. We're going to meet again in February before we finalize our approval. I just wanted to go over it and make sure I understood all the feedback. But what I want to do, if we're okay with it, is to bring up the backgrounder that has been initiated by Andrew to complement some of the components of the application to support future applicants. Is everyone okay with that? That we move on to that? Okay, super. Stop sharing, and then I'm going to bring that up. There we go. Share. Okay, so this is like a one-pager that the task force has started to work on that takes into more consideration and understanding of what those 9 different elements are. And this is a starting point, bringing in, you know, the traditional Anishinaabe practices, defining them. And then I think we had, you know, some additional context added at the end. So everyone will be able to read this, offer insights and comments on it. As I said, once this is approved and we have a bit of a process to go through here, we will be doing either a webinar or a presentation with Andrew Judge to talk about this in more detail. He does an excellent job walking through this for those who aren't familiar with this perspective. So we'll certainly have that as a resource, and we'll talk about other potential collaboration opportunities with that. So we'll have that as a digital piece, but you know, that's time for applicants to spend reading or watching something. It's very important to have, as Victoria, you brought forward, like that some kind of a handout that people can refer to if this is a new way of thinking for them. We want it to be simple and accessible. To the point that was made about like understanding this type of thinking, this knowledge, these insights. As I said, Andrew has shared a resource with me that can maybe speak to this, not specifically these 9, but this methodology, this way of thinking in more detail, and everyone will be able to review that, and maybe we'll be able to add some more to this. But we wanted to keep it lean, just to help, you know, with the fact that hopefully someone reads it, because people aren't going to read something that's excessively long, right? So any comments on that as it stands right now?
You may want to zoom back up. I mean, I can only see here.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Hey,
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
I think this is great. I think this is even for me, like really helpful in seeing things more holistically. I wonder, and we can talk about this at another time once we sort of get further down the road, but as part of this backgrounder, I wonder if, again, sort of in the spirit of making this approachable or easier for people to understand, is it worthwhile to include maybe some prompting questions or something that helps people sort of start to think about seeing their projects through this lens? I'm thinking if an individual wants to come and you know, has a project that would, maybe it talks about like active transportation and getting kids out on bike lanes. how would someone, what types of questions would that person ask to make sure that they are taking full advantage of the learning opportunity that this presents in seeing their project through this perspective. So we don't have to, answer that now, but just food for thought as we're going through the process.
So I think we actually talked about that on a high level as a task force. Like,
Awesome.
giving some examples or preparing content. And this is actually something that the committee could help with, or we could partner with like a Clean North or a Sioux Climate Hub on something like this, where, like the Sioux Climate Hub, for example, they put out webinars over the year. Like, I think they do them monthly, bringing in subject matter experts on different initiatives, little forests, what have you. So creating like some content, sharing it on cities, social media, communication, what have you, to support with that would be great. That's something that will take time. I think prompting questions is good, but even examples, like, okay, so you want to, like, if we go onto the city's website, we've actually listed, and it needs to be updated, every project that's received funding from the city for this fund. And I've been told by applicants that that's really helpful because they know about the fund, but they're like, gosh, what do I apply for money for? Right? So maybe even some examples about, okay, so here's a project idea, and this is a way that you can incorporate, this way of thinking in your application. I think that's what you're trying to say, right, Tori? So I'll take that back as some homework for the committee. I think that even it could certainly fit into this one pager for sure, and it would be very helpful. Thank you for that feedback. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would benefit, I think, from having a better understanding of how the interconnectedness, like, I guess if you're going to present on this at some point, Andrew, I would benefit from understanding how the interconnectedness with, what we would define as social outcomes or economic outcomes, which are important to, are kind of captured in this, because I think that it is, but maybe I just don't fully understand it. In that example that was just brought up about active transportation, I think, there's a lot of social benefits there. And that's part of what I'm struggling with. If we put this right into the definition in the terms of reference, then whether we intend it or not, it does put an emphasis on this. And this is good, but there's parts of it there's things that I don't understand how fit into this, I guess. And one of those is social impacts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think those things are difficult to define because, I'm trying to honor Anishinaabe, on Anishinaabe worldview. And of course, a lot of what we have currently in our contemporary society and what we rely upon, we didn't have 400 years ago, 300 years ago, even 200 years ago. And a lot of what we have now is like very polluted, and it's very much causing environmental damage. And so, I mean, especially in terms of like economics, like, for example, I'm looking in the paper I'm writing right now about cultural tree species at risk in Canada's forests. Only about 1% of people, Anishinaabe people, practice their culture today. So, you know, how much funding is the government going to put towards saving species that are of like culturally endangered as a result of climate change versus, you know, the Species at Risk Act and all the other species that are like endangered because of well, many threats, but well, I would say the main one being global warming. These individualistic like, how are we going to address this? I mean, I think we're a pretty smart committee. I think there's a lot of smart people here, and in terms of like how we're going to address this versus that, or like, you know, I don't know. Personally, I don't know, and I don't necessarily agree that being inclusive of an Anishinaabe worldview limits us in how we're going to address certain applications. I think that in terms of, let's say, what Tori suggested, bikes going in bike lanes or whatever, bikes going out in the streets instead of cars. I mean, it's still a little bit focused on that reduction of emissions. And I just really feel like we as a community, and me as a person who is trying to, you know, apply these practices and do in certain contexts, that we have to go beyond that view. It's being emphasized and re-emphasized in many different forums as a way that we're going to somehow prevent what's coming. You know, I chose to be on this committee because I felt like, okay, I got to do a part, small part in trying to make a difference in recognizing where we're actually at. And for me, because of my bias, which I don't hide or ignore, that's going to be based on Anishinaabe people's knowledge, who, you know, built and sustained huge civilizations for, like, I mean, since the last ice receded in the region where we are now, like, you know, 9, 10,000, 11,000 years. So we don't have the luxury of those timelines right now. We don't. And I don't know if people are like really like aware of what's going on in our world, you know. But I know for sure, like, we have to do better than what we're doing right now. And I'm trying to work with scientists. I'm trying to work with you guys. I'm trying to work with many different organizations and peoples to bring awareness to this so that we can start to kind of reorient our idea of what sustainability is. And so that it's not limiting to future generations, so that at least we've like tried our best to do what we can. I mean, at the end of the day, probably from the window of that office, you can see the massive steel plant behind you, which like is not gonna slow down. And we never even talk about, like, anyways, I'm not gonna go too deeply down that road. But what I'm trying to say is that all I wanted to do was expand our view. Our original view was a reduction of emissions. I am very open to adding and building upon what's here. It's not perfect. It's as the best we can do. What I have and what our subcommittee had. But any suggestions, like I took when I rewrote some of this, your suggestions, Eric, Tori's suggestions, and I tried to rework the language so that it honored what you have said. And if there's more things, then let's make it happen.
Thanks, Andrew. So when it comes to just going back to what you were saying, Eric, I don't think we really have a part in the community impact or the environmental impact. We talk about social and economic. Do you think that there would be value in addressing that in some capacity? Like in the questions itself, not this backgrounder, or like, do you think that is that something that you would like to see?
Can you just repeat that again? Sorry.
So what I was trying to say is, you seem to have brought forward something about the social and economic impacts. I don't think we address that in our application right now. Are you looking to see applicants address that?
I think there's, well, I think that's that's a core part of the definition of sustainability.
Yeah,
So if, I think that it wasn't maybe such a big deal before, but like, I'm not at all debating anything that you're saying, Andrew. This is all good stuff. My point is just that we're putting an emphasis on this. And I hope that we're not downweighing the other components of the definition of sustainability. And the definition of sustainability as I know it, and I am a white male, so my definition has that bias, but my definition as I know it includes a component of interacting both with social outcomes and with economic outcomes.
well, I think
So,
that,
so
that
if we're going to emphasize, and also environment, and this is a really nice holistic view of the environmental impacts. But if we put that as core and central, then we probably also need to mention the other things.
I agree.
So I have a question, and it's just perspective. So is this something that we're asking applicants to consider, or is this a lens that we're putting on the proposals that we get?
So the scope of this terms of reference is for applicants who apply to this fund. They need to understand that this is the scope that we are asking them to consider when they apply for monies. So part of that is going to be in education, because we're moving beyond the traditional view of, okay, let's just plant some trees, pick up some garbage, and it's trying to extend that. So we acknowledge that it's going to be a bit of a change. There's going to be some change management as part of that process, which is why we have to have this backgrounder and more insights on these definitions.
I almost feel like with this, it'll be tricky. I mean, there's not that many applicants, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but it's almost easier in a way to get all of us on the same page first for how we look at the proposal with that holistic view, social, economic.
Yeah.
Than having applicants from the outside being like, it'd be nice if they were aware of it and they understood how we're gonna review the proposal, but it might be, I don't know, it might just be, yeah, maybe it's just change management, maybe it's not a big.
No, I hear you. I think it's necessary. It wasn't done on purpose, but I believe we're going to have to do a session with Andrew for the group. And that very well will have to be its own thing. It's just the nature of this committee is when we're all together, it's a public, we have to follow the procedures of a public meeting. So it will be live streamed, it will be recorded. So I was trying to just, let's get us all on the same page, but I acknowledge your perspective and I'm going to talk to my superiors to get some guidance on that, but I get where you're coming from. Okay. So I like what you're saying, Eric, I really do. And we'll incorporate some language about that social and economic piece, people, planet, profit, into that understanding in our definitions as well. So any other comments or feedback from anybody regarding these two items? Okay, so I'm not seeing any.
Oh, I just wanted to say one last thing.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I think like we're not on different pages necessarily. I think we're like on similar pages. Like I agree, like there's socio-economic, cultural, like there's impacts that have to be addressed, and I'm not exactly sure. I guess for me, like when I'm looking at this, it may seem from an outside perspective that like the person is outside of this, like the human is outside of this. And that's not at all the view. Like, we are a mammal. We are and like, so like we're in there in this, and so everything that is factored into what we do is in this, but I think it's not clear. And I
Totally get that. Sorry to interject. I
yeah, no
totally
problem.
get that.
Yeah.
And I totally get that that's where you're coming from with this.
Yeah.
I just think that when I said we should make clear, or I would benefit from understanding how that fits in, I guess what I should have said is, I think people, when they read this, are going to interpret it as that's what you were describing there is not going to come through. So it's going to lean people towards focusing on a specific thing.
Right, like focusing on, no, I appreciate that. I've never even thought of that. So it makes me in this moment think about, like, I mean, I'm doing all this other stuff, but like reworking it, because I know that sometimes these things don't get across. And, I've been studying and working with this knowledge and applying it for almost 15 years. So like I sometimes take for granted that everybody's going to see it the same way I am. It's like, hey, how come you can't see it the way I'm seeing it? But like, just like probably in your work, people don't see it the same way because you've done so much study. Anyways, I think, yeah, we can make more clear, but I would love to see some like recommendation, and if it's adding to this or adding an additional sentence to something else or paragraph, whatever, so that what you guys are saying is more clear. I think that's good. At the end of the day, the only thing that like I'm hoping is that we get, I know there's like limited applications, but we get more applications that kind of are moving in a certain direction at least. And then I could say, okay, at least we moved a little bit in a certain direction, because we weren't going in that direction at all 6 months ago. So if we go a little bit in the direction, maybe in 6 years we'll be a lot in that direction. So I'm happy with, yeah, people's amendments or even changes. Yeah, thanks.
Super. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Eric. Really good discussion. Lots of dialogue. Okay, so next steps, I'm gonna send this out to, I have to find a way within the city processes where we can all sort of see this in real time, because collecting comments from multiple sources is not working. I'm missing things, so keep your eyes open for that. I'm gonna send out a request for a meeting at some point in February. We don't have one scheduled. Our next meeting is in April, but we'll meet again and we'll focus on this so we can bring forth a resolution as a committee once we're all in consensus, so we can start using this application for Green Initiatives Funds project. Sound good?
Yes.
Do you have any comments?
I just want to say two quick things. One, I wanted to say thank you to you and Mark and Andrew for working so hard on this. This is not easy to do. And you've come back a few times, and every time it just keeps getting better and better, and it's getting richer and deeper and so on. And I know it's not easy, and thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who's contributed with their thoughtful comments and their genuine intention to make this better and treat our world in the way that it deserves to be treated. And that's wonderful. I have one very, very small practical thing. And it's coming to my head because of another meeting I was in about another thing to do with applications. We have no character limits on this application. And I just wanted to say to you, if you thought that was something that we should address at the same time as this, because sometimes, certain applicants there's a lot of reading there, and it can be very, and sometimes it helps, like to force any grant or anything you ever do, there's always limits, right? So to force people to have a reasonable amount of characters or space or whatever to share the information they need without creating, huge long documents. I was part of a rating of something a few weeks ago, and somebody submitted 36 pages. And, that was our own fault for not making a better, so that's just, you think
Yep.
about that. Thank
And
you.
You see that for other city grants? Do we have character limits?
To be honest,
You don't know.
I don't even know.
But I've seen it for others, like provincial,
I
and
forget.
federal. Yeah, it's useful. It helps keep it more like fair. Okay.
Yes, that's also true. Fair, right.
Okay, so as far as next steps go, we'll pin the resolution. We have some more work to do. You'll be getting a calendar invite. And I will talk to my superiors about an information session for the committee. Before we finalize the terms of reference, because it makes sense. It was very useful what Andrew did with Mark and I, but if we do that, it's open, so we'll be creating the reporting resource at the same time. So I just need some help with the logistics of that. Otherwise, I believe that's it for this agenda item. Over to you.
I think we're back over to you,
Over to you,
because if
Right.
I'm not mistaken, the last item is the staff update.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Okay. So a couple of updates as it pertains to the city's sustainability portfolio. Okay, so this is a long time coming. In 2023, we created a study to develop a homegrown community retrofit program in Sault Ste. Marie. We've submitted phase 2 funding to develop the program design. This was submitted last year at the end of the year, and we're working with the funder on finessing some details and, looking good, and hopefully we have final details within the next couple of months. We would be working on this, if approved, with the PUC and your neighborhood credit union to develop a community efficiency financing program in Sault Ste. Marie. So there's 3 steps to this: feasibility study, program design, and then implementation. So we'll keep the group posted on that. We also applied for some funding to the Federation to develop a community climate adaptation plan. This is something that you're seeing a lot of municipalities working on, not just mitigation, so the reduction of emissions, but building those communities that are more resilient to a changing climate. So hopefully we hear about that this year as well. The deep energy retrofit audit project, those are done. We've submitted our final comments to the consultants. This is a big deal, going to ship big dollar figure when we go to council with it, providing that roadmap to bring our top 6 emitting facilities to net zero. Hopefully get that to council in the next couple of months. Still working on the electrification study for our battery electric buses. That will be going to council at some time this year as well. Work is ongoing for the John Rhodes roof replacement. I know it sounds simple, but we will be replacing the roof to accommodate future solar, putting in a heat recovery project, and replacing 6 HVAC units as well. The solar project is underway at the City Transit Administration Building, and that will be completed this year. Oh yes, composting. So I have an update for everyone on that. As you know, through the provincial mandates, municipalities that reach a certain threshold population-wise will be required to have community composting curbside. This project is in the design phase in Sault Ste. Marie. We meet that threshold. A lot of time is being spent for looking for cost reduction strategies. It's at about 60% design. They will have a revised estimate when that's complete about what those cost reduction changes will be. An EA addendum is likely going to be needed to accommodate those modifications. This is not scheduled to begin this year, but there will be an updated timeline when it's ready to go to tender. Very big project. City Engineering is leading this project, and if anyone would like more details, I'm happy to connect you with them. So that's sort of a summary on some of the big things that I've got cooking right now. Probably a lot more, but I just brought forward the bigger ones. And I now wanted to take a few minutes to highlight some of our details about the Green Initiatives Fund. So this program has been around for 4 years. We have received 31 applications, 28 have been approved over the course of its lifespan. We've allocated over $200,000. And as you can see here, just looking at the funding disbursements, we've minus 2022, where we had a bit of extra money thrown at us from a reserve at the city. We've been spending just, incrementally a bit more, which is nice to see. Our budget is $50,000 a year, but sometimes we get extra monies here or there. Last year, you may recall, we got extra monies from Enbridge, $10,000 worth to go towards community sustainability projects. And any monies not allocated every year, of course, go towards tree planting on city lands the subsequent year. So going into this in more detail about last year, as I said, we received 18 applications total, but only 12 were approved. So, we were, getting very specific about the types of projects that we wanted to approve, hence the need for a application refresh. So most of our applications were received in the first quarter. We did shift to moving away from that rolling application to a quarterly intake. So you can see that, a lot of projects were being planned and discussed at the beginning of the year, and then the amount of applications reduced as the year went on. So that was nice to see because, it takes a while to plan a project and the word was getting out with applicants. So as I said, 12 projects, lots of different things from invasive species pulls to LED retrofits. The hydroponic tower garden at École Notre-Dame, the Little Forest Project 2.0, lots of great initiatives there. So some of these are complete, some of them are still a work in progress, all great initiatives happening within the community. So that's my summary. I don't know if there's any questions about that, but I like to put forward a little bit of an update on how the fund is doing since it's been around now for 4 years.
I'm just curious, I don't know if you'll remember, but in 2023, only about half the money was funding was spent to date. Is there some still carried over?
Yeah,
or-
so some of the projects don't wrap up
Okay.
in that year. So it's just,
Gotcha.
it's like, it's rolled over. Yeah, it's like it takes a while for some of them to put their claims in. Any other questions?
I have a couple,
Okay,
if no one else does. All right, my first is, so if I'm reading this properly, approximately $16,000 will go towards tree planting in 2025. As that was
No.
remaining,
no, that is the funding that has been spent to date.
okay,
Okay, so of the 57,000 that had been allocated, only 16,000 of that has been actually spent so far. So there are some monies, we had $60,000 in the fund, give or take, because we had 50,000 plus the 10,000.
oh, I actually,
So we have about 2,000 that will be spent on tree planting, give or take, in the city this year.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's basically the difference
This is-
between
this is-
57 and 60.
Correct.
Okay, got it,
Correct.
got it,
So
yep,
this number is what I track, because if
Yeah.
you look at the other slot, this one.
Yeah.
Like, this is the money that's approved and this is the
Yeah.
actual spend, and then it balances and
yeah,
then
I just
whatever
wasn't,
it's
I just
spent.
wasn't reading it right,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
cause I, this is great. And this is great to have and carry forward and whatever, it helps us remember and
Yeah,
can you, how would a project like the Himalayan balsam pull or the shoreline cleanup be a work in progress?
so they haven't submitted their claim yet.
And is there a timeline by which people are required to do
They have
this?
1 year. So they're still they have 1 year to submit their post-grant report claim. And so these projects, they were approved in May, so they have
Yes.
until May of this year, right?
Okay,
October. So I would say these are done. They just haven't submitted their
Okay.
claim to me for reimbursement.
okay, perhaps that's one other thing for the rules, which would be to shorten the timeline by which, they have X amount of time after the project is completed, if it's 3 months or something like that. So in the case of this, if they did the shoreline cleanup in July, then they have 3 months following this,
I
the
see.
completion of that project to submit their paperwork, because it's just, that's helpful because that would help us know, is there extra money in the fund and
hear
things
you.
like this? So maybe we could look at adjusting that timeline, so it's
So-
more timely,
Yep, I agree with you, but that's
Okay.
not how it works here. We now have
Yeah.
I've been told this recently. There is a agreement that every grant applicant now has to sign after they get the thumbs up from us
Yes,
and council.
yes,
And that in that agreement, which is created by legal, it specifically says the 1 year. So in there is a date from the date that it was approved by council.
Yeah.
So they have that.
I'll take that up with somebody else. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Super. Anything else?
I have nothing else.
Okay, anybody else? Cool, okay,
So now, oh, I'm sorry, Emily.
next meeting? Or do you have anything you wanna discuss? Cause I'm.
No,
just gonna
no, I was
pass
just
things-
gonna ask for mover and seconder to adjourn. That was all, but I forgot about this part.
So our next meeting is official meeting is in April. We'll have another one hopefully in February, just to finesse the details about the fund, because it would be nice to have this refresh out there for applicants who don't submit between now and the end of March to use the revised version. But not to worry, if it doesn't get out there, we've still got 3 quarters for people to apply with. And we want to get this right as opposed to rushing through it. So in April, it'll be a packed meeting. We'll be talking about reviewing applications for Q1 of the Green Fund, but we'll also be going through the city's annual sustainability report, which will include our emissions update for both corporate and community. And the reason why we're doing this, because this has been incorporated into our terms of reference now as a committee, not the fund, but as a committee, is so that we can take a look at sort of this scorecard of where the city is from a sustainability standpoint and provide feedback for budget, which starts in June. So everything is working out well from that timeline perspective. So just sharing that with you as we think about the upcoming meetings. As such, we have meetings scheduled. I think it is certainly in May and June to prepare for that submission to the city. Okay? So that's just a bit of an overview. Keep your eyes open for emails from me with these revisions and a meeting in February. It will be short, probably no more than an hour. So that's that. All right, over to you two.
The February meeting is Andrew's information session part of the February meeting, or is that
Be
something?
determined.
Okay,
To be
okay,
determined.
okay, got it.
Hopefully, you know, because
Okay.
I have more meetings than you
Yep,
need.
yep, no, it's just fine.
We'll get there.
All right, any further questions? Seeing none, could I have someone to move and second adjournment of today's meeting? Thank you, Nairi. Thank you, Andre. All right, all in favor? That is carried. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys.